Okay, you could start.
Hello, this is Dennis Kennedy, and welcome to this edition of Legal AI Live, which is an informal and practical conversation once a month about the ways that people in the legal profession are actually using AI on the ground. I'm Dennis Kennedy. I'm the director of the Center for Law, Technology, and Innovation at Michigan State University, and I've been around the world of legal tech and AI for a long time. And let me turn over to Matthew first. Could you introduce yourself, and we'll just kind of go around the room?
Hi, everyone. Oh, and we got Kim joining us. The fun stuff about going live. All right, Kim. Thanks for joining us. Oh, her audio is still connecting. Well, I'll introduce myself, and then Dennis, you can welcome Kim. I'm Matthew Curvis, everybody. I'm the subscription attorney. I host the podcast Law Subscribed, where I interview guests. We talk about how they're using innovative technology to ditch the billable hour. And so I use a lot of AI myself in my practice at Subscription Attorney LLC. And so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And we have Carolyn Elephant as well. Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Elephant. I have my own firm in Washington, D.C. area that focuses on energy and environmental justice issues. And I'm also the founder of MyShingle.com, which is the longest running blog on solo and small firm practice. So my interest in AI is very practical. I want to figure out ways that I can use it in my practice and also ways that lawyers can leverage it to start their own law firms.
Great. Nicole Morris.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Nicole Morris, and I join you from sunny Atlanta. I'm a professor at Emory School of Law, where I teach intellectual property courses. But in addition, I'm director of our technology innovation program. So we're focused on all tech, AI being one that is getting a lot of attention right now. And I've known Dennis for a little while, so I try to join these fun chats when I can.
And we just had Kim Bennett join us. Kimberly, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Kimberly Bennett. Sorry. Fun chat. Me being so techie, I missed the main point of this. I'm sitting on LinkedIn. So anyway, Kim Bennett, I am CEO and co-founder of Badoo. We are a platform that enables legal teams to sell, deliver, and scale subscriptions. And then I'm also founder of K Bennett Law. So I've been a practicing attorney for 18 years now across the board. And I've been running a subscription law firm for close to 15 years. And so really excited to talk about AI and be a part of these conversations. Just saw Dennis and Carolyn and Nicole and Kat just recently and at an amazing event that Kat ran. So I'm really excited to join y'all in this roundtable discussion. Thanks for inviting me.
And let's go to Gio.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gio George Bellis. I'm a practitioner in suburban Chicago, primarily doing business litigation. I've been doing this, I hate to say this, which justifies the bald head and gray hair, for 52 years. And please don't wish me another 50 years. And I've been using technology since I bought my first computer in 1982 for $12,000. And in 1989, I thought I bought the ultimate computer when I got a Pentium 486. And I started using icons in a GUI, and I thought, this is it. I'll never have to try to figure out how to write a new program for myself in BASIC. And I've been trying to catch up ever since. I've been dabbling in AI. We've been using it in our litigation. I've actually done a lot of e-discovery work and TAR work. I've been well-versed, well-traveled in e-discovery. And now I'm trying to catch up, as we all are, with the speed of AI in a world that's really getting harder and harder to figure out.
And let's go to Kat Moon.
Hey, I just jumped in. I assume we are introducing
We're in the
ourselves.
introductions phase.
Yeah, with a little warning, I just popped in. Hello, everyone. Kat Moon. I teach at Vanderbilt Law School. I co-direct with my colleague Mark Williams our AI Law Lab, otherwise known as VAIL. And my current mission in life is just to shake things up. So
I like
good
that.
to see everyone.
I like that a lot. So I do this thing in my classes now Well, I try to get the students to tell me some of the things that they're doing with AI, and I call it, what did I try in AI? So I want to try that as an opening segment for this show. And I'll do what I do with my students. I'll ask for the first volunteer and then I'll wrap up at the end. Oh no, you're reacting the same way my students do. Do I have to call on somebody?
Well, you know,
It's just because we're so polite.
right. And I want to encourage, we've got 10 people tuning in live right now, and I'm sure that number will go up as we have this conversation. I want to encourage the folks watching this live and even maybe later on LinkedIn, put in the comments section on LinkedIn, which is where we're going to see your comments, what you're doing in AI. And I'll just say right now, what I'm doing in AI is today, which has been a busy day for me. I'm just getting back from being at a conference of a software tool that I am a user of. And that was cool, being at a conference where it was all for one company. And like I was the odd person out. I'll be able to share what that is later. But I just got today a Notebook LM Pro. And so I've started just, you know, if you are a Google Business Standard subscriber or up, you get access to all of the Gemini advanced features now as part of your subscription. You don't have to pay any extra for that. And they were slowly rolling out Notebook LM Pro. And so today I've started to just tinker with, okay, building out giant notebooks now, because now I can put up to 500 like items in each notebook. And my goal for this is I want to have a knowledge base that I can query against for my whole practice and like extract data from. I want to do that for my podcast, which previously it was across 3 notebooks, and now I can put them all in one. I have the idea that I will have a separate notebook for each client that I'm letting my clients get access to, because one of the promises of Notebook LM Pro, which I haven't been able to troubleshoot yet, but it says that you can grant, you know, access like you can with Google Drive and Google Docs and Google Sheets now with your notebooks. And so now for each of my clients, I'm thinking of having, well, 2 files, because I might be keeping client notes I don't want them having access to, but then one that they can access their whole file and ask questions about it. Now, this isn't going to be purpose built for law firms, right? And so like they're, you know, and I'm going to have to let my clients know, like, don't rely on anything, you know, when you're querying against the notebook that's for your file. But that's my plan, is to start experimenting with that. And I'm just setting things up today. And that's like brand spanking new for me. So very excited about about to report back next month on how that's going.
Cool. Who else?
I'll go. I just finished a 68-page, 230-footnote article on AI for energy practitioners. I had high hopes that AI would actually write the whole article for me, because there are professors out there who are saying that they're using AI to draft scholarly pieces. I did not have that level of success, but I did use ChatGPT's deep research feature, the one that was just added. And while it didn't really give me what I needed, it did pick up on some research sources that I hadn't identified before. And I also used it to like grab citations or rewrite passages that I wasn't happy with. So I think it sped up the process, but it did not displace me, which when you're dealing with that many footnotes, I think you kind of want to be displaced if you're a normal person. So that was my experiment with it for the week.
Following up on what Carolyn did, I published an article in the Illinois State Bar Association's trial briefs section on deep fakes in the courtroom. And I used AI to help refine the paper. I checked my citations, and I like the end result.
Cool.
I'll jump in. I'll be a little less. Mine was just kind of basic use, right? Like, how can I just make it a part of the daily like operations of my work, personal life? Like, what can I do? I'm always just like, well, what's the easiest and fastest way to bring it in? I was mainly I'm mainly a ChatGPT kind of person. I'm trying, actually purposely not trying to expand too many tools, because I do think it's just, what is it tinkering with things versus just staying productive and figuring out how to leverage in a process-driven way. So that's what I've been really focusing on, how to like leverage a process-driven way of implementing AI in all aspects and maintaining, you know, the type of confidentiality I want. If it's, I never put client stuff in there, but if it's like marketing emails, like I literally was just refining like 5 emails before I came on here with AI. So like, that's what I think I am trying to do. And that was kind of my week of AI. Also went to some talks, but that's not using it. But yeah.
Kat or Nicole?
I'll go.
Actually,
I'll let-
Matthew, I noticed this morning that Notebook LM Pro came out, and I don't have an enterprise, but I do have a Google One account. So I was planning to see if that was something as an individual user I could play around with. I've enjoyed using Notebook LM, so it's a tool that I have been encouraging others to use. I've been an ambassador. I keep encouraging my students to tinker as much as they can. But they're very concerned. And I think, we're going to talk about CATS gathering last weekend, and I shared this in one of the breakout sessions, that they're not as proactive users as the law students, as maybe other student groups might be. And similar to Kimberly's comment, I pretty much stay in the Gemini and Google sort of universe of AI tools. So I like this podcast because I learn about other people using other tools.
Kat.
So I too have been using deep research a lot over the past couple of weeks, and I've found that before I give an assignment to a research assistant, I actually put it through and refine it using deep research. And then I share that whole brief as a point to get started. And I will tell you, in our AI lab practicum, so I have 6 students who are working on lab projects with me for credit in a 3-hour course. And they all did a deep research project. And one of the students submitted essentially the same query that they had gotten from a professor for a research assignment, right, as the RA. So the student had already done the research and had already submitted the result to the professor, but he put the same thing through deep research. And in 7.5 minutes, he got a response that was very, very, very close to the work he had done. Now, it can't but go behind paywalls. So there were some case citations and things that were missing, but the accuracy level was very high. And he said it took me essentially 3 days to do this research. It took deep research 7.5 minutes, and he graded it an A-. So, and just to follow up on the point that Nicole made about law students using it, I actually regularly ask my students, what are you and your colleagues doing? And of course, my students are using AI because they're in an AI course. However, they observe that it's becoming as ubiquitous as email. And one student said he'll look around the room, everybody's got their laptop open during a lecture, right? And he sees on the side of the screen that they have ChatGPT or something open, and they will ask questions of it during the lecture, like to clarify, to understand points. Like, they are actively using it essentially as a learning co-pilot. And all of this, by the way, all of these uses this isn't, when taking an exam or anything like that, right? They are just trying to learn and absorb and understand the information. So they describe it as a very high level of uptake, for what that's worth.
Wow. So one of the things I'm doing, and I'll probably talk about it more in the future, is that in my AI in the law class, I've given them the assignment of creating an AI personal learning assistant through prompting. And I'm giving them a bunch of examples on that. But I'm doing 2 things. And so one is practical and one is fun, because fun is what I'm using AI a lot more for these days. And so there's an approach that I've used before in business called scenario planning, and it's been done. One of the founders was a guy named Peter Schwartz. It came out of Royal Dutch Shell primarily, but it says, when we're facing rapidly changing times and we're not certain what the future is going to be, and we can't really predict it that well, we can create scenarios based on certain assumptions and map them to these 2x2 quadrants. And then we can kind of, sketch out what those likely scenarios are to look like. We can assess whether one's more probable than another. We can recognize things that are happening. We can start to think about that. So as a MasterCard, we did this exercise one year, and it took a whole year, tons of people, hundreds of people involved to do this. Now I'm doing it in AI, and it takes, seconds, basically. I have a prompt that I use, and I run a bunch of them, and then I select them. And then for the group discussions that we do, I put these up, and we choose one, and then I divide the class into 4 groups, and they each take one of the scenarios, and it it sort of frames the discussion for them, and we enter into a discussion at a more advanced level. And I really love this approach. And so it is part of what I've been doing is using AI to say, if there is a technique or there's an article that has checklists or other things, can I turn that into a prompt that becomes a usable tool for me? And so that's a really effective use I've found. And the fun thing I did was I've been thinking about this whole, new 51st, 52nd, 53rd, 54th state thing that gets talked about. So I said, well, what if I did this thing where I sort of prompted the AI to look through the potential 51st states and put them in order of which might make sense, in a weird sort of way. And it gave me the top 12. And then I said, how much would it actually cost to acquire one of these countries or territories? Just a thought experiment for fun. And it came up with those numbers. And it was really fun, really, really interesting as a thought experiment. And it was like, oh, with this AI, you can just sort of do almost anything that becomes a question for you. So I will say that the number one answer was Cuba, which could be purchased actually for not that much money. And in every case, it was always cheaper to buy the new state than it would cost to take it militarily. So kind of an interesting thing and it also really starts to make you think about how much are we trusting AI and for what, and why do we do that? And why would this AI result be either different or interesting or useful as compared to humans? So anyway, next topic I have, because...
So Dennis, we have just one, Corinne Munsterman, who's at, which school is she at? She's at UNT Dallas. She actually talked about what her thing is in the chat, if that's okay, if I could just add that to the conversation. So for the folks who aren't following along on LinkedIn, I encourage you to, but Corinne said, a colleague and I have been creating educational bots using Poe. How to negotiate a deal, how to interview a client, explain the rule against perpetuities, explain consideration, et cetera, et cetera. We've asked students for feedback, and the overwhelming response is, on all caps, more please from the students. So thank you, Corinne, for participating. That's interesting, and a totally different way you're using AI than the rest of us talked about. So very cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to, since we have, a number of us who are at the Women Plus, I still call it Women Plus AI Summit. I don't know whether we call it Women and, but I keep calling it Plus. But at Vanderbilt, great conference, sort of like, some elements of unconference, like a lot of different formats, and you get to meet a lot of people, learn a lot of great things. But Kat, you put it on, maybe you could describe it, talk about it a little bit. And, I'm sure it was gratifying to you, the results of it, but maybe let people know what that was and what the experience was.
So thank you, Dennis, for mentioning it. So I call it Women in AI, or WAY for short. It's easier to say. And I would love to actually defer, because Carolyn, Nicole, and Kim, and you all were there, and I frankly am much more interested in hearing about the experience from people who got to experience more of the programming. The downside of hosting and running an event is you actually get to not do as much because you're busy sort of keeping, the wheels on the bus and keeping things moving. And so I really missed all the great content, although I did get to see a lot of people. So, my thought around this was simple. As I shared at the opening of the event, towards the end of last year, I was really just overwhelmed with the constant onslaught of data and maybe opinion, what have you, about how women are, quote, falling behind in the use of AI. We know that there's a big deficit of women leadership in technology generally. And so there was growing discussion about that gap widening, specifically with the development of AI technology. And so I just decided to do something about it. And the first thing I always do when I want to do something is really turn to my community, my network, my people, and suggest that we just get together and start talking about things. And so I reached out to Carolyn, and she signed on to co-host and kind of got us started with the initial ACE talk that day. And ACE Talk, very simple. I'll explain this and I'd love to pass the mic. The framework of the conference was very simple in that my vision was to make it about what the people in the room wanted to talk about and learn about. And so I suggested a framework, ACE, which means action. Community is the A, community building, connecting. The C, the E is empowerment, with the idea that we come together, we figure out how we're going to take action, we focus on community building and making connections, and ultimately we want to empower ourselves and empower each other. And I will say that this is about moving women forward, and it is not about just women. So my interest is in creating a room for women, and also creating ways for women to be in all the rooms that matter. And those are two distinctly different things, and they're equally important. So I just want to emphasize that. So allies, welcome, needed. And I would love to hear what others have to say about their experience of the day. I was overwhelmed. About 90% of the almost 150 people who came either got on a plane or drove 4 or more hours to get there on basically a month's notice. And so what that tells me is that there is an incredible need and appetite and interest in doing this kind of work. And so, yeah.
Great.
I'll jump in and talk
Yeah.
about my experience. Yeah, I think, when I saw Kat post about it, I was like, oh, wait, I want to attend this. I want to be a part of it. And I was lucky to be one of the speakers, but as also an attendee and a speaker, it was good. It was empowering. It was insightful, gave a lot of various perspectives. I felt like people were vulnerable. They shared what was the realities of being in a space, being a woman in a space, trying to ensure that the rapid pace of AI development doesn't leave out all of the perspectives and diversity that we need to have to make sure it is both impactful, but also not dangerous, right? And so I'll say, as just seeing, and I thought, if there's one person I'm going to go to last minute, it would probably be Kat. And it was from start to finish, very insightful, learned a ton, had a lot of great side conversations. And I'll highlight for me, as I gave a talk on funding and gave my perspective as a founder who has raised money and what that means and what that looks like, and the good, the bad, the ugly of it, and tried to give people the perspective of what they're walking into when they're doing that. But then being able to support others that are on that path. As someone who's quite new in the space, don't feel like I'm super experienced, I thought that was really impactful. So it felt like it was inspirational, aspirational, it was empowering, but it was also real time, in the moment impact with people that you can support at that moment. And so for me, being able to support others on that same journey, looking to maybe 1 or 2 steps behind where I'm at, was helpful. So thank you for creating that space. Yeah. So that was my experience.
I thought it was just really exciting that the conference captured so many diverse people from different populations and experiences and positions that you don't usually see at tech conferences. I've gone to tech conferences. I mean, I've been going for like 20 years, and a lot of times it's kind of the same old people. And this was just so refreshing because you had women who were developing products for big law or who had come from big law e-discovery companies. You had people who were solos in small firms. You had people who were not attorneys at all, who were just developing, and everybody was exchanging ideas. Usually these conferences are so ghettoized and people just like kind of hang out with their own crowd. You had academics too, academia was there, and people were really interacting and exchanging ideas with each other. So that was just so refreshing and so exciting. And just the fact that 150 people turned up was also pretty amazing. And it suggests that there's really a need for more of these types of conferences. So those were some of my takeaways from it, but it was just really very invigorating.
I'm happy to share my thoughts. I was delighted just to be an attendee, to be quite honest. Kat, I understand I've planned some events at Emory, and it is exhausting and like a funnel that sucks you into sort of the operational side of it, so you don't get to see. So I was delighted just to sit in a room and listen. And as Carolyn mentioned, it had so many various sort of stakeholders within sort of this AI journey. Your colleagues at Vanderbilt on the data science side were tremendously interesting to me. We had high school students, so there's like pipeline building in terms of really just getting greater education and awareness. The speakers in the, limited breakout sessions that I attended were phenomenal. Most were from big law, sort of sharing either statistics about women in AI and sort of, where we are really, or about how to use some of the advanced tools in ChatGPT, which I was not aware that they had a similar notebook LM type product. And I also love the sort of TED Talk. So Hillary Bowman, I'll just shout her out like a quick commercial. Hillary, anyone who doesn't know about Hillary Bowman, you're going to learn in the next 30 seconds. She's got a product called Curious.ai, which is like a client intake tool where you're interviewing a client or prospective client and doing sort of the question and answer. The AI tool is suggesting additional questions, additional issues. That was one of the most unmet need type of solutions where, my work at Emory, we're looking at working with innovators and what's the problem, right? Like that's the first question we try to really hone in on. What problem are you solving? How does your solution solve this problem? Her tool was sort of like an Apple product. It's solving a problem I didn't know I had, right? So I'm a fan of hers. So I just need to carve out. I know we're also busy, so I'm like, I'm constantly trying to like create more space in my time capsule to like go through and do her questionnaire and survey because she's trying to get the word out. So I'm glad I got 30 seconds to shout her out. But it was phenomenal. Like you're phenomenal. I will tell you, people will show up for you, Kat, because you do phenomenal work. You've got this outstanding network and ecosystem and are like trailblazing. So I've admired you from the moment I entered the academy and continue to do so. So God bless you. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, fun was the word for me. I sort of feel like fun is one of my words for this year, and it centers around AI, weirdly enough. But I so enjoyed it. It was great for me to be like, the outlier in a way. And I wanted to go to get different perspectives, and I got it kind of sort of feel like I go to these conferences and everybody's trying to somehow prove that they're the smartest person in the room. And it's just such a drag, and I was like, I'm going to go to some place where, people are talking about what they're doing. They support each other, you learn, you talk to people ask questions. I will say, I have not been able to stop talking about the presentation by these high school students. That was just amazing. And so the story is, this was like I think it was a small girls' school, high school in Ohio. Their teachers brought 4 students, and they had this pilot AI class last semester, and they talked about what they did. And in every way, it was so impressive. Like the way they presented, the stuff that they did in the class, the questions they raised, how they handled questions from like an audience of lawyers and professionals. They were so good. And I've told people that in some cases, it made me want to rethink the whole education system. I was like, these people are really capable right now. And if they have to go to law school before they can do some of the things they can do, we sort of take them like out of what they can do for like 7 or more years. And so it was fascinating to get those different approaches. And so that's what I found. I found the perspectives were great. What I was hoping to see, lots of learning for me and so much energy at the end. I was telling my RAs today that I want them to kind of join the LinkedIn group and stuff, because I really feel there's an energy out of this event that turn into something that goes on for a long time. And so this was great, perfect for me. And it's inspired me to do my own unconference, which I do every year, but now I'm really energized about it, which will be on March 29th. It's called Revisioning Law 2025 at Michigan State University. And the theme is loosely going to be AI and new legal careers, but with an unconference, we kind of let the people, the attendees decide what they're going to talk about. So that was great.
I just want to shout out really quick, Kevin O'Keefe. Thanks for sharing this event with your LinkedIn network. If you are watching this live or later, and you want to shout out on Legal AI Live, then go ahead and share this event with your network. Okay, back to our regular scheduled programming. Dennis, go ahead.
Okay, so
Dennis, if I could jump in
Yeah.
real quick, I just wanted to share, you mentioned kind of the energy and momentum behind it. So there's a tremendous amount of energy and momentum behind it. And I continue to have people reach out and ask, how can we have more of these events? Can I have one in my area? So just want to let folks know that we will be in London on April 25th. We're having an event in London in the afternoon at Denton's. They're hosting us. We will be in Paris. Lots of interesting things going on in France right now, following on the heels of the AI conference that just happened. So we're going to have an event in Paris. It will be the first week of July. Should have that date fairly soon. And then Terry Mottershead in Australia, in Sydney, she is hosting a Women in AI event in Sydney on July 29th. So just a shout out to folks, if you want a good reason to travel to one of these places, this is an excellent reason. And if folks are interested in knowing more about future events, if you go to womeninAIsummit.com, there is an interest form you can fill out, and then you will get all information on all future events. So thank you for letting me share that.
Cool. The other thing that one of the other things I really wanted to raise today is I've noticed it almost feels like in the last week, like 3, 4, 5, 6 new AI tools and versions of tools with different names coming out all the time. And people are still asking me, like, what's the best AI tool to use? And then I mentioned the thing about people being the smartest person in the room and wanting to be experts. A new tool comes out and immediately, like on LinkedIn, somebody's telling you that they've tested it and they found it to be like the best tool or the worst tool. And I'm like I haven't even had time to download it. Like, how is that even possible, right? So I think there's always been two approaches that I consider. And so one is to get really good on one tool and learn it really well, and then see where there might be something missing and then try something else. And the other is to try more of them, but kind of keep it manageable. Well, this week is sort of where I felt it kind of got unmanaged for me. So I use 3 tools for the most part, and I'm really switched over to the highest number, Google Gemini lately, mainly because it produces really long output, which is important to me. And so ChatGPT, Claude, then I said, I want to try this Mistral because it's European, it's open source. I like to do that. There's some things with the private tools I don't like as much now. I want to do more charts and things, and that led me to Wolfram AI, which is another paid tool. It comes out of a mathematical background. Notebook LM, very excited about. Lots of ways that I could see using that. And then people probably saw that Harvey, the legal AI tool, got a $300 million funding, $3 billion investment. I kind of made a jokey comment about that, and got an outreach from somebody at Harvey say, do you want to have like a trial version and like play with this? So I'm like, actually I don't, because I don't want to have one more thing. And the stuff I'm doing is outside legal more. And then there's some specialty tools too. Like I heard of this thing called Snipped, which you can listen to your podcast, and AI will summarize them, and you can like easily get highlights from it, sorted to Notebook. And another one called Matter, which I can take things, emails and other things, they'll summarize them and do all these things for me. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of tools. So I think this is and people are new to AI. This is going to be super confusing. So I'm curious what people think about that. There are sort of overload of tools this time, and they're clearly it used to say that generative AI was the world's biggest open beta test. Sort of feels like it's the world's largest open alpha test now. There has to be almost no testing on this stuff before it comes out.
Yeah, and I'll let everyone know if you want access, if you're just trying to do math with AI or mathematical equation stuff, Wolfram Alpha is pretty incredible. But if that's all you're trying to do, because there are always what I learned from Jonathan Mast, who's like really into the AI stuff, he's an educator on it as well, is like there are limitations with APIs. But Wolfram Alpha or Perplexity Pro integrates with Wolfram Alpha via an API. And you could, if you're a Perplexity Pro subscriber like I am, then you could just do the math equations in Perplexity Pro because it leverages Wolfram Alpha and even lets you know when it's doing that. And I also just asked Perplexity to confirm that it integrates with Wolfram Alpha. And I find Perplexity to be pretty reliable since I use it. Like, I think I use Perplexity to answer your question, Dennis, like more than any other tool every day, daily for multiple different things. Like even in my legal work in particular, whenever I used to be a litigator, and now when I'm doing a deal and there's another lawyer on the other side, the first thing I do is I look up their law license to see if they've ever been censured or like something's ever happened to their license. And then I also just do a Google search to like learn about who I'm handling on the other side. Well, now I tell Perplexity, and this is my favorite Perplexity prompt, is just tell me about blank. It could be a company, it could be a person, it could be whatever. And, sometimes it'll say, oh, well, there's, I know there's not, but like there's 3 Dennis Kennedys. Like, which one do you mean? And then you could tell it. And then you could ask follow-up questions. And like, those are some of my favorite prompts right now, just to like do some basic internet-based research on an idea, on a person, on a business. And so I'm using that at a top level. And then daily in my actual practice, I'm also using Paxton. That comes as no surprise to folks who actually follow and listen to me. I really am a big fan of their tool. Notebook LM, like you mentioned. And I will say for folks that are concerned about the whole data thing, at least the first time in November that I accessed Notebook LM from my firm, because I've been using it for my other stuff, my podcast before that, it gave me a terms and privacy pop-up that said, your privacy and enterprise conversation data is secure. And it says your Gemini conversations won't be used to train our generative machine learning models. And so at least to me, that felt like, okay, I'm comfortable now. I could use this for my practice. So if you saw the conversation earlier where I said I'm going to put client data and other things in there, at least I have the understanding due to the representations that I think I could reasonably rely on from Google that data and that information is private and secure for my business. So that's why I'm using that. And those are my 3 main tools that I'm using right now.
You guys
Right.
are clearly the super experts, so I'm going to be the super novice. I almost feel like I'm having imposter syndrome. Tell me about Paxton. How do you spell this Wolfram? Thank you, people on LinkedIn. I'm asking the questions. You're like, what are these people talking about? I'm on this LinkedIn podcast going, what are these speakers talking about? How do you spell Wolfram?
So that's Wolfram. And so Stephen Wolfram started this mathematical software called Mathematica. And this has been this evolution. There's a part of me that says, I don't know how they do the Nobel Prizes but that he's a potential candidate, I would think, for his body of work. So it just became really interesting to see what he was doing. And for me, it was sort of less the mathematical piece, but I just wanted to do these charts. It's really hard to get even the 2x2 charts or Venn diagrams out of AI. So, and I looked at it, it was about $600 a year. And I now realize this is sort of funny to me, right? That I'm now going to creepy close to the point where I'm going to be spending more for AI per month than for cable. So that is how the world is changing. So I know, Kat, you have to run. Do you have some thoughts on how you handle like the plethora, I think is the word people like to use these days, of AI tools?
Yeah, I do have to run, unfortunately, but I will say I'm definitely guilty of like chasing every shiny new thing. So the minute I hear about something new, like I sometimes stop in my tracks and jump into it and start playing around with it. And so I feel like that's part of my job right now. That's how I justify. But what I like about forcing myself to try the new things is, one, I really am getting a much better feel and understanding for the power of these tools. And I'm also learning which tool does what things the chatbots kind of have different personalities. They do certain things better. And so that has value to me. I will say right before I jump that we are working on a project through the lab to provide kind of some help and guidance to folks in the legal profession on tools and resources and all those kinds of things. And it's going to be kind of meta because it's going to be about generative AI. And we're using generative AI to build it and create the user interface. So stay tuned for that. But I will look forward to listening to the recording because I want to know what everyone else is doing as well. It's been good to see everyone. See you soon. Bye.
Great.
I mean, I'll jump in and say, I think kind of what I was saying before, I do see all the tools that come out and wearing multiple hats can't always test all the tools, right? So like, I think that's just not always possible. But I've always felt this, I've always had this opinion about AI and the rapid growth of AI, which is that it is not the current model is just not sustainable, right? There's like, I think that statement of like, hey, we're going to have 400 tools with different approaches just brings us back to the siloed approach versus an integrated approach to how we operate. And so I do feel like consolidation is happening. I think Gemini went free because they realized it makes no sense as an add-on. It should be integrated throughout. And so, I mean, I think I'm maybe on the camp that AI should be viewed as a utility versus how it's kind of moving through right now, and that it's I feel like the way I'm approaching AI, so whether that's in my founder hat with Badoo or if that's in my law firm owner hat as KBL, I'm always thinking about, well, what function is it serving for me? And how do I want this to be an integrated operation? And that it's very easy to get yourself very siloed with it. So my approach is keep up to date with what's happening, see what it is, but maybe don't test all the tools, because you can either, for a solo and a small firm, you can blow your budget in 2.2 seconds. And then are you actually getting purposeful, impactful, long-term integrated use? And seeing kind of where it goes. But I think when I hear people, my use of AI is also in the back of my head. I'm always thinking, well, what is this model based off of? What information is it pulling from? How accurate is it? So like on the one hand, I too, like Matthew, will go in and like search for things quickly to get responses. But I also think about, if we go back to like, watches and all the issues with watches for Black people, and that it not being able to read our stats in the same way because it wasn't based off of a good underlying model, or Pinterest having issues where, and again, I know these are different kind of technology, but the same questions are going to arise. So I guess when I'm thinking about what I'm using, I'm testing a bunch, but not incorporating a bunch, right? I'm trying to think about how I still function and how I can improve operationally productivity, improve well-being, and be able to deliver with the best, most designed, most functionally dynamic tools that are on the market. And so for me, that does look like, unfortunately, like the tools we talked about, the Gemini, because it's integrated, ChatGPT, some of these other tools, and the other ones are great, but I think they are point solutions, right? And how do we get out of that?
If I could interject, I'm a seriously active practicing lawyer. I have active cases and I'm in court on a regular basis. I have a hard time keeping up, period. And I find tools that I can use and I use them. And within the last month, this is just an example of what we found we could do. We started jury trial. We asked ChatGPT to give us a message to the jurors that might resonate with the jurors that they connect with. So we give them the facts of the case. Then interestingly enough, we also asked GPT if they're familiar with the reptilian instinct theory that some focus group people have, most notably Friedman, have come up with. And there's a backstory to that sometime. I'll tell you about it, Dennis. And it gave us a message to give to the jury. I had a case a couple of months ago where a federal valuation case, and I had 50 pages of notes that I've been taking over the course of the 2-year litigation, and I was preparing for the deposition of the opponent's valuation expert. So I asked ChatGPT to organize my notes, and then when it did, I asked it for suggested other questions that I might ask, and it actually gave me a half a dozen things to ask that I hadn't even thought about before. So right now, I'm pretty satisfied with ChatGPT and use in connection with Lexis AI Plus. And going back to what somebody suggested before, I could have ChatGPT to draft whatever I want. At the end of the day, to check the citations, I'm putting it into Lexis or Westlaw and having it to comment on whether or not those briefs or articles are accurate, and it's giving me a comment. Keeping in mind, every federal judge and every law clerk has Westlaw on their desk, and the tool in Westlaw that is most impressive, it will critique the other person's brief or your own before you publish it. And then going back to tools that are available, the one I like the best is ELI 5. Explain it like I'm 5. And that's really good because I'm still trying to figure out how to calculate the escape velocity to escape the gravity of Earth. But we'll figure that out someday.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder what's going to happen to some of the legal specific tools, just because ChatGPT, Claude, the general purpose tools, Gemini, they have so many more users and they can evolve and improve so much more quickly than the legal tools, which are very clunky. So when you have like tools like legal specific editing software, do I get a better output if I just ask Claude to redraft my brief? Or even for things like research, like Gio pointed out, I mean, ultimately you've got to read the case somewhere and you've got to check the site somewhere, but there's a million places you can do that. And a lot of the legal specific research tools don't do the things that you like the ChatGPT to do. I mean, when I helped a colleague prepare for moot court and I set up ChatGPT so that he could simulate a moot court oral argument. There's no legal tool that does something like that. So I just wonder, if a lot of these legal tools, like what kind of business model they have in place besides just trying to keep competition away, or just focused on big law, which will pay for a name brand, because I feel like a lot of these other tools are evolving really quickly and may overtake the legal specific ones, which is great for people who are starting firms or who have limited budgets, because paying for Westlaw or Lexis used to be a huge barrier to entry for starting a law firm. I can remember paying $600 a month for 12 searches back in 1993. You no longer have a concern like that. So that's kind of what I asked myself. And I use most of the tools that other people have mentioned before, and just depends on my mood. And if I get a good response, sometimes I'll get mad and one of them move on to another, but it's a very personal approach. So
How about you, Nicole?
I have not had time to tinker with anything new, so I'm still playing with the old stuff. I was taking notes. I will sort of share a somewhat secret thing about me. I'm a late adopter to technology. I think it's the engineer in me. I like other people to fail first, and then I can figure out what I want to do. So I'm just curious about, like, currently, Gemini, for the most part, I can do what I need to do with it. So unless I have a new problem, I like what you mentioned with charts. I've not had a need for data crunching in that way where I want something like a visual representation of it. So I'm going to check out the Wolfram product for that. But yeah, I'm a late adopter. That's why I'm on this group thing with you, Dennis. I want to know what other people are doing and learn that way first. I think Carolyn brings up a good point, which is outside the scope of your question. So we'll save it for another time. In terms of the business model for Westlaw or Thomson Reuters and Lexis, right? They're very limited in terms of the features, right? They're just sort of holding on to the other more public-facing models get legal questions wrong. But at some point, that is not going to be the case. So to your point, Carolyn, I hope they're working on something soon, because their business model is more expensive and very limited in terms of the features. So that got me thinking in a different direction.
So as timekeeper, I'm going to step in because we only have a few minutes left, and some folks might want to go to like the legal journalist conversation that's happening at the top of the hour. And thanks for everyone who's joined us today. I see we have 16 live right now. It's ebbed and flowed. It's gone up and down throughout. So thanks everyone for joining us, even if you've been silent in the chat. What I'm going to do is we'll go around, try to keep it to 30 seconds of like a tip that everyone has going into the next month, or maybe if you don't have a tip, something that you're going to explore and that you're going to do. And while you do that, I will use the Zoom AI companion to summarize this talk today and then share that as my tip at the end. So Dennis, let's start with you.
So my tip is something I've been doing a lot of, and it's think about the end of prompt engineering. And I've started to use the AIs just to generate the prompts for me. And I over prompt. So I would say generate 3 prompts, 5 prompts, something like that. And then I'll look at them. And then you can also really easily ask it to generate the sample results. And then I can see if the prompt is actually bringing something that's in the format that I want. Let's go to Gio.
I guess the only tip I could give is don't lose faith in being able to figure this out. As intimidating as this is, we've solved other problems before, although this may be more intimidating than anything we've experienced before. But keep your shoulder to the wheel, the eye on the ball, and hope that you don't fall off the bike.
Okay, Kimberly.
Sure. I'll say pick a tool, go with it, and just have a conversation with it. Be focus on the conversation. Be nice, as everyone says, with it. But I would say just pick a tool. If you're feeling overwhelmed, there's a lot out there. Pick the tool, see how you're using it, find what's the gap for you, and then maybe find the next tool that fills that gap. But start with one tool, take action. I think we've always said this, like the biggest issue is not using AI, so just try to start using it and start incorporating it to your daily operation.
And Nicole.
I guess my tip would be to find like this group or other groups or other individuals and follow them either on social or LinkedIn or wherever to get some information, right? If you are feeling overwhelmed, as Gio mentioned, just like following along, sort of take my late adopter approach and just try to learn from others before doing anything. And I'm definitely going to try that Wolfram Alpha tool.
And Carolyn.
I guess my quick tip is how I've been using it recently, which is I use AI to solve the problem of getting citation for online articles or publications. It used to be that if you were writing about them, it would be such a bear to try to figure out how to cite it. You just upload the URL into ChatGPT or upload an article into Claude and just say, give me a cite. And it gives you a citation and gives you the URL. And so problem solved.
And then I'll jump in, and my first tip is to say, join us next month on March 14th, same time, same place. And since the AI companion tool didn't give a good tip, I have a different one. And that is to Carolyn's earlier point that, why use these other tools when the foundational models are doing some really interesting things that have the most users? I still say don't sleep on certain GPT wrappers that are plugging and playing with multiple models. In particular, I was most impressed still with GCAI, because before these deep reasoning models came out, they had already done something wrapping around an AI tool that asked follow-up and clarifying questions, which is super useful, that matters to lawyers using AI. And so I think that that's going to be how they distinguish themselves from those foundational models. And also bringing it back to Paxton, I think we're going to see more of this because of what I'm about to say, but Paxton has a proprietary legal large language model, so that distinguishes it and makes it different, and I think better at legal tasks than just using a ChatGPT or a Claude, which I'm still using Claude more so than ChatGPT. So I think legal specific large language models that legal AI tools use is something to look out for and pay attention to. Dennis, back to you to wrap us out.
Great. So much fun. And this is the idea of this, educational and entertaining. And if you learn something, that's great. But I after the conference, CATS conference in Vanderbilt, one of the notes I took was we need to treat AI with a sense of wonder, not a sense of fear. And that's what I'll leave you with. And then we'll see you next month. And thank you, everyone.